you so much for joining me for another awesome month of Color Your World technique. This month I use the awesome embossing paste. I don't know if any of you have ever tried embossing paste before, but this is shimmery white embossing paste and it's so much fun to play with. I'm going to show you a couple ways that we're going to use it. We're going to add ink to it. We're going to use some masks. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to be making these two cards. This first one is a happy birthday card. So we're going to frost the cake and we're going to make an ombre kind of style background. And then here we have the yellow brick road. So we're going to do a kind of a brick style here and have our little ruby red slippers. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to tell you what you need. We're going to start with the birthday cake first. Of course, you're going to need your embossing paste, and embossing paste is a little bit tricky to work with. The one most important thing is never leave the lid off of your embossing paste. It only takes about 5 minutes for this to harden completely, and it will be like cement and you'll never get it off, or you won't ever be able to use it again. So always making sure that lid is nice and tight and on there. Don't open it and start using it until you're absolutely ready. The other thing you need is, if you're working at a station or like your desk, I recommend a tub of hot soapy water because that is what you'll need to clean off the embossing paste. Now, if you're in a jam or you need to do something quickly, you can always use baby wipes to wipe it off, but you do need to do the soapy water to actually get everything off. I'm kind of going to be using a combination of paper towels, baby wipes, and soapy water to keep everything clean. The other thing that I recommend you use are silicone mats or silicone sheets. These things are wonderful. The embossing paste doesn't stick to them, adhesive doesn't stick to them. They can resist a lot of high heat. So these are great for using with these types of materials. Now, the other thing that you're gonna need is the mask. And so I'm using the mask that has polka dots. You could use whatever background you wanted, but I like polka dots and I thought this would be a cute background to use. So you're going to I have two silicone mats. One is for when I am going to be putting the embossing paste on my paper. And the other is because I want to mix embossing paste with color before I put it on my card. So the other things you need, I'll be using the Happy Birthday to You stamp set. This is in the Celebration stamp set or the Celebration catalog. I'm also using the coordinating birthday dies, which unfortunately now have sold out. So hopefully you have them. You will need the birthday dies to cut out the flowers. Okay. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started. The other thing you'll need is something to spread the embossing paste. And these are tools that you can use. These are the palette knives. And each one kind of is a little bit different. This one, is long and thin. This one has a nice flat spatula for scraping. And then this one's nice to get in the little corners, get little kind of small detail. So really it's up to you to figure out which ones work best for you. The other thing you're gonna need to color your embossing paste is an ink refill. So I'm using this is Petal Pink for my background, so I'll be using Petal Pink ink refill for that. Any kind of pink will work. If you use Blushing Bride, you can use Blushing Bride ink refill. If you're using Petal Pink, you could do Petal Pink. All kinds of, whatever pink you have will work. Actually, I did want to show you, and I don't know if I still have it. I did one in purple yesterday. So you could do all kinds of fun different colors. And you see, I frosted the cake in purple. So lots of different ideas that you could do. But today we're gonna do the pink. Okay, in your packet, you have an envelope with everything inside. And it has a large piece for the background. It has a piece of vellum. This is gonna go behind the cake. I have already cut out one of the cakes for you, so you'll need a cake to do the frosting. We have a beautiful stand, and this is cut out of copper foil. You'll need another piece to emboss the flowers. So the flowers are embossed and cut out, and then we're gonna watercolor them. And then this is for the sentiment that we'll stamp and fussy cut out for the happy birthday. But for right now, all we need, so I'm gonna leave everything else in the folder here, or in the base card. But all we need right now is just this piece of cardstock. So We set our piece of cardstock down. I'm gonna move this out of the way for now. I don't wanna get it messy. Lay your mask over it, like so, okay? Now, we're going to mix our embossing paste. I'm gonna put 3 piles of embossing paste, and I'm gonna do my darkest color, my middle color, and then my white color. So I'm gonna have 3 different piles of embossing paste that will be colored slightly different. So taking the lid off, there is this little film here, and I like to keep this on here just to hold as much moisture in as possible, because over time these do dry out, even in their tubs. So you just want to be mindful of that and keeping it moist. So I'm just scooping out some. I'm gonna put it down on my silicone sheet. And again, I'm making 3 piles. So just not very big. You don't need a lot of paste. A lot of this will go to waste, truly, because it will be too much. But better to have too much than not enough. Okay, so since I got paste on this, I need to very quickly wipe this off, like no joke. Like you can't leave it on there for a few minutes while you color. You need to wipe it off, and then I'm just gonna put it in the soapy water. All right, so I have my mat lined up the way I want it. Now I'm going to take my ink refill. I'm going to put 2 drops at the top, 1 drop in the middle, and nothing on the bottom. Now I'm going to take another tool and mix this up to get my color. Okay, and I'm just going to use my baby wipe in between. And if you feel like your color is still too dark, you can always add more paste in to make it lighter. Okay, so just cleaning off my tool, throwing that in the soapy water as well. All right, now I'm ready to apply it. So I'm gonna start with my darkest color up at the top, just scoop some up and just spread it across my project. Okay. And you just want to kind of go about 1/3 of the way down, right? So every section is going to have about 1/3 of the paste. And you always want to kind of scrape off the excess. You don't want to leave a whole bunch behind, okay? Then you're going to pick up the second section here, and you're going to do a lighter version of that same paste, just about halfway down, okay? And now we're gonna go in with our lightest, which is the white, and I'm gonna take off any color I have here on my spatula. I'm gonna pick this up and start about halfway across the middle paste, right? You kind of want to overlap so that they blend nicely. Okay, so now I'm going to take off the excess, and I'm just going to scrape across and make sure I don't have any lines. And then when you're done, you can pull up your finished project. Now this needs to go immediately into the soap because it will dry and it won't come off. So I'm just going to clean my tools. I got it on my hand, my fingers, so that's pretty messy of me. So cleaning that off. Again, it is very, very tough to get all of this off. So that's the only thing, is that it is kind of messy. So then you're going to take your paste and just wipe that off when you're done with it, and you'll feel that it's already hardening on your silicone mat. I'm just going to take another baby wipe and get the rest of that off. Okay, so then with this, we've got to pick it up and move it off to the side to dry without being harmed. Just going to put it up there. And it does only takes a few minutes to dry. You'll see, you know, by the time we get back to it, it's going to be completely dry. Okay, so I have cleaned off all the embossing paste. Now, the next step is to frost the cake. So you have your cake piece, and we're going to get a tool. So let's get I'm going to get the skinny tool, and I'm going to get a paper towel and just kind of dry it off real quick. So again, just making sure that it's nice and soapy. I'm going to move my other card out of the way of the water. I'm getting nervous. All right, so we've got our clean palette knife. We're going to scoop up some more embossing paste, and we are just going to spread the embossing paste just like cake mix cake mix, like frosting. So we're just going to spread the frosting across our cake. And I like the frosting to have lines in it because, you know, when you're frosting and you're using a knife to spread the frosting, it's not flat and perfect. It kind of gives it more of a frosting look. So you can just spread it and leave it rough looking, which I thought was kind of cool. Okay, so there's that. Now I'm going to put the lid on my embossing paste, make sure it's nice and dry. I'm going to clean off my palette knife and throw it back in the soapy water for right now. Okay, all right, so now we can set this aside. Definitely want to get up any leftover embossing paste and wipe that up. Okay. All right, the next step is we are going to stamp and emboss our flowers. So we have the cake stamp, and all we're going to do is stamp the flower image. So we're going to do that in Versamark ink, and then I have white embossing powder that we're going to emboss it with. So first, take your embossing buddy, pass it over your piece of paper. Okay, now let's go ahead and stamp the image in Versamark. So just stamp it right in the middle of the paper. Okay, then we're going to take our embossing powder, pour it over like so. Okay. Now we are going to heat set this. So using our heat gun, set that real quickly. Okay, so once your image is set, okay, so you're gonna take your aqua painter and you have your ink pad. So I have Petal Pink and Granny Apple Green, and those are the colors that I'm gonna color my flowers with. So I would just pick up the ink off my lid using my aqua painter, and I would just color my flowers. Now, really try to control the water, because this isn't watercolor paper. Not that you can't color on normal paper, just have to be careful how much you kind of rub on it. So, and the other thing is just, you know, be patient with it. I know it's kind of hard to see white on white sometimes, but if you have the lighting just right, you can see the embossing. So you're just going to give your flowers a pretty pink color. And I love that how easy it is to watercolor once you've embossed something, because kind of contains the color. It kind of holds the color in to the embossed lines. Okay, so there I've got my flowers colored. Now I'm going to go back over, clean my brush off just a little bit, go back over with the green on the leaves. So just identifying the different little leaves and coloring those. And again, it's just, especially with the leaves, it's a little bit tougher to stay in the lines. Just do your best. Okay, and then there are these little beads or little buds. I'm gonna get more Petal Pink, and I'm gonna try and do them a little bit darker than the flowers themselves, so less water and more ink, and just dab inside the little flower buds or whatever they are. foliage. Okay, so there we go. All right, so I'm gonna clean my brush off. Close our ink pads. I'm just going to make sure this is good and dry. Now what we're gonna do is we're going to cut this out with the Big Shot. So these are the flowers. They will cut out only the flowers and leave the cake behind. And while we wait for that to completely fully dry, what we can do is take our happy birthday stamp. So we'll set this aside. We'll take our happy birthday stamp and we'll stamp the happy birthday and fussy cut it out. So again, with the petal pink ink, ink that up, stamp happy birthday, and then we will do my favorite F word, fussy cut. People are always like, what is fussy cutting? I'm like, oh, it's just cutting with scissors. So I'm just going to kind of cut myself a cloud around the words, and then I'll go back in and get more detail. So I'm just going to, trying to keep things curvy. I love the curvy look. Curvy is just rounded edges, right? Just trying to keep everything rounded. Now you can go in and do as much detail around these letters as you want or as little as you want. You can just cut around them. Truthfully, you could just do a banner if that was, if you're like, I'm gonna skip the fussy cutting and just cut a banner. You could do that too. But I just like the way this looks. I'm seeing it more and more often and I wanted it. But this is your project too, and you can do whatever makes you happy. Okay, so I've got my happy birthday cut out. Very happy with it. Now let's go ahead and cut our flower. Okay, so now that we have the flowers cut out and our cake, everything should be dry. And if it's not dry 100%, you can use the heat tool to speed it up, but you can see everything on mine is dry. Now you have your base here, so let's go ahead and glue our polka dots down to our base. And I'm just going to use some fast fuse. You can use snail, you can use tear and tape. You can even use dimensionals if you like. Now I start with my dark on top and the light on bottom. If you want it the opposite way, you can do that too. Again, this is your card, your creation. I want you to love it in the end and be happy with it. All right, so the next step we're going to do is I'm going to put tear and tape, because tear and tape is really strong stuff. I'm gonna put tear and tape on the back of my flowers so that I can glue them down to the cake. So the cake has embossing paste on it. And so in order to ensure that it sticks down really well, I'm using a strong adhesive. Okay, I'm gonna take your pick tool and just remove the adhesive off of those. The embossing paste is just such a cool effect. And this is the shimmery stuff, so it really sparkles, which I love sparkle. Now, if you have regular white embossing paste, you can make your sparkle by adding Dazzling Diamonds sparkles to it. So you don't have to have the sparkle kind. You can add glitter to it as well. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is we're actually gonna cut the cake stand that comes with the die. Just cut that off completely, because we cut out a fancier one with the dies. So just cutting around the bottom, kind of round the edges a little bit. So you've taken that cake stand off completely, okay? Now we have our cake stand here, and we have our vellum piece. So our vellum is gonna go right smack in the middle to kind of calm down the polka dots a little bit. I just put a strip of tear and tape across the middle because I don't want it to be seen, okay? I want it to hold, but I don't want it to be seen. So I know that the cake is going to hide any adhesive that you might see through the middle. But as you can see, it does a great job of hiding. You can't really see that tearing tape through, even without the cake. All right, I'm going to use dimensionals on the back of my cake and the back of my stand. Now I'm going to use large dimensionals on my cake, and I'm going to use minis on my stand because my stand is a lot smaller. And I'm going to also just make sure I've poked out all the little holes in the cake stand. There we go. All right, so let's put some mini dimensionals down. Just making sure that's all down. All right, let's go ahead and get these. Get these backings off. Now I'm going to put my cake stand down right about at the bottom of the oval, making sure it's not crooked. Now we're going to take these ones off. Okay. And glue this down as well, just right over the top of the cake stand. Okay, and then we're gonna do the happy birthday. We're gonna also use little mini dimensionals for that. Like so. Take off the backings. Okay. Go across the cake stand, happy birthday. And I'm noticing that my flowers aren't sticking down very well. You can also put some liquid glue back behind it to make sure it stays down, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make sure that this does not pick up and holds down. There we go. Okay. Voila, card number 1. Super cute, right? So pretty. All right, so that's card number 1. We still want to have our soapy water for card number 2 because we're going to have another mask. Now, just to remind you what number 2 looks like, we've got our yellow brick road. So what we're going to do is we are going to color the embossing paste again. We're going to use a mask and we're going to color the bricks yellow. So there is another mask and it is brick, which is awesome. I love it. In your pack, you have a piece of shaded spruce. You have your ruby red slippers. You have a piece of the shaded spruce and gold ribbon. And then you also have a little label for the sentiment. So right now we're just gonna focus on the embossing paste and then we'll bring in all the rest of the pieces. So again, just having that cardstock there and then putting your mask over it. Now the thing we want to kind of keep in mind, and I feel like mine is a little bit backwards, is that I think it should have went from narrow to wide, right? So if you're looking at if you're standing on a sidewalk and looking, as it goes into the distance, it's supposed to get narrower. But I kind of went wide to narrow. So we need to do vice versa. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our tools ready. I'm gonna get a paper towel, dry off my tools, make sure I have them ready to use again. I've got my long tool, and then I need my favorite is the wide flat. That's one that has a flat edge right here. It's great for spreading the paste. Okay, now I have Pineapple Punch is my yellow ink refill. And so I'm just going to take some embossing paste, scoop some out here onto my silicone mat, and just want to make sure I have enough. And just close that nice and tight. Put my color on there. Just 1 or 2 drops will do. You don't need a lot. And if you get it too wet from the ink refill, then it will start to bleed into your cardstock. So you don't want it to be too wet. You want it to be nice and vibrant, but if it gets too wet, you'll need to add more embossing paste so that it doesn't bleed into your card. So if you see that, if you see color bleeding, it's because your embossing paste was too wet. All right, so again, I'm gonna start from the top and kind of spread my way down. I'm gonna turn it sideways because I'm left-handed and I tend to kind of work sideways a little bit. So taking your embossing paste and kind of just adding it to the card. Now you wanna make sure you're holding down the mask so it doesn't slide around. That's important. If you feel like it is gonna slide on you, you can always use washi tape to tape it down. And I'm just spreading back and forth the yellow brick road. Okay. And then just scraping off any excess. Okay. So that should be good. I'm gonna get a baby wipe, clean my tool, put it in the soapy water, pull up the mask, put it in the soapy water, scrape off any excess on our silicone mat. Now you can also put your silicone mat in the soapy water and wash it as well. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same with this, but I'm just gonna kind of clean off any excess. I've got it all over my fingers. Okay, and then I'm gonna throw that in the soapy water. Now I'm gonna set the soapy water aside and I can go clean everything off really well after I'm done. But that's kind of how you preserve your tools and make sure that they don't get ruined in the process. All right, so here's the deal about this yellow brick road. You can let it air dry. It only takes a few minutes, but if you're impatient like me, you can always take your heat tool and set it. Now, the cool thing about the heat tool is that as you're drying it, it actually makes the embossing paste puff up a little bit more. So we're gonna heat set this. Now, there's lots of fun things that you can do with this embossing paste. You can emboss using emboss powder on top of it. So if you have white embossing paste, you want to make it look gold or silver or some other color, you can emboss on top of it, sprinkle the embossing powder, heat set it. You can make your own mask. So if you don't want to use one of the masks that we have, you can use a die cut, cut out a butterfly and use the butterfly as a negative and emboss over it. You can do all kinds of fun things with embossing paste. I showed you how we can paint a cake, which is fun. So yeah, I've also frosted trees to make it look like snow. So you can use embossing paste to use it like snow. So there's just lots of fun different things that you can do with the embossing paste. Now, the next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be shading around the brick road to kind of look like grass. So I'm just going to take my sponge and just kind of rub that ink in. Now, I am using the Shaded Spruce ink, same color as my base card. Really, you could use any green ink that you have for grass. It doesn't have to be Shaded Spruce. And I'm just coloring in or shading in around the brick just to kind of look like grass. And that's why it's important that the embossing paste is dry, because otherwise you're going to mix it into your sponge. It's going to be a hot mess and ruin your ink. So just making sure that that embossing paste is dry before you shade. So I'm just trying to make sure I get in near enough to the bricks. Okay. Very, very nice. Okay, so then we have our yellow brick road. The next thing we're going to do is stamp our sentiment. We have the sentiment, "Life is short, buy the shoes," which I thought was really cute with the ruby red slippers. So I have this piece of Whisper White cardstock, and I have the sentiment here. I'm going to stamp it in real red to match the ruby red slippers. So just stamping here on the side. Oh, that was way crooked. I'm trying to try that again. A little bit less crooked, still crooked, but that's okay. Okay, now we're going to create a dovetail at the end. I'm going to do it the lazy style, where you just cut up and cut from the sides to make your little dovetail. You can use the banner punch if you have it and you want to use it. I just sometimes get lazy and don't want to do that. All right, so you have a piece of ribbon in here, and you're probably wondering why it's not long enough to wrap around and tie a knot, or maybe it's just barely. You're like, Tiffany, you've been stingy with the ribbon. But in reality, what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you take it and tie a knot without gluing it down or wrapping it around the paper. And this is a great way to reserve your ribbon and not use so much. So you just take it and you tie a knot. So you have your ribbon in a loop, tie a knot, pull tight, so you have this nice little pretty knot. Okay, then you're going to take your scissors and cut it in the loop. And I did mine on the side because I want it to wrap around on both ends, like so. And there you go. Now you didn't use as much ribbon, but it's wrapped around and looks like it was tied. Cool, right? So what you can do on the back is put some tear and tape down, or runner, or whatever it is you're going to use to glue the paper down. I'm just going to put it on all four sides, call it good. Take your piercer, pick up the backing, okay, so let's go ahead and place our ribbon again where we want it. Again, you can have the knot wherever you like. I just kind of want mine in the corner. And then you're going to fold that ribbon across the back like so that it's glued down. All right, let's go ahead and glue this down to our card base like so. And you can trim these down if they're too long, or you want them shorter, you can do that. Okay. Now let's go ahead and put dimensionals on the back of our label. Pick and flick. Stick that down. Let's go ahead and take our ruby red slippers, which are hiding in my card. We're going to put dimensionals on the back of those. And go for the bigger dimensionals. 2 of the big dimensionals will be perfect. So we'll get our ruby red slippers and glue them down. Okay, and then we're just going to kind of space them a little bit. And voila, you have this super sparkly fun card. I love it. How fun is that? So I hope that you enjoyed the embossing powder, or I'm sorry, the embossing paste. It is a really fun medium to color with. And you can see that you can make some really beautiful cards and projects using this embossing paste. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me another month of Color Your World Technique class. We'll see you next month for more fun. Bye-bye.